All right, well, it is 5 o'clock, so let's call the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Oh, there's Phil.
With Phil's entrance, I'll make a motion to approve the May 12th regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? All right. The Select Board will meet on the following dates at 5 p.m. Monday, June 9th. Reminder, I will not be present on the 9th. And then Monday, June 23rd. Citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify Town Hall before noon the Thursday before the scheduled meeting. And all meetings are held here in Town Hall and are available on Zoom. Zooming information can be found on the town's website, plymouthnh.gov. Chairman's comments, just a thank you to the rec crew for putting on a great Memorial Day celebration yesterday. Despite the technical difficulties, I think it was a good event and very well attended. There was, I think that's the biggest crowd I've seen there in my years of attending.
That was
So.
great.
It's good. Glad to see everybody, and again, thanks to the rec crew. Other than that, I will hand it to Scott for the town manager's report.
Thank you. Quick updates this evening. Plymouth State University update. The Select Board, Town Manager, Finance Director will have an additional Life Safety Services Agreement meeting with the university, the first to be held on Monday, June 9th at the Select Board meeting, which starts at 5 p.m. at Town Hall. I met with Jessica Dutal on Monday, May 19th. We discussed the upcoming Plymouth State University freshman orientation dates to take place in June. We also discussed the student retention survey that was recently done. Many positive comments about the community, outdoor activities, downtown area, and the sense of community. Budget revenue 24-25 budget. As we move further into the fiscal year, we are diligently monitoring the town's budget to ensure responsible stewardship of taxpayers' dollars. We remain committed to transparency and will continue to provide updates on our financial standing through regular reports and at our Select Board meetings. As of May 9th, the 24-25 budget is right on track with 18.6% of the budget remaining. Revenues are doing very well with only 5% remaining to collect overall this year, and is currently working on the year-end closeout with regards to the 24-25 budget, encumbrances, and fund balance. Health insurance benefit educations. We held 4 Zoom benefit educations to provide improved understanding and utilization, better health care choices, increased engagement, proactive health management, and effective navigation of the healthcare system in order to assist in reduced healthcare costs in the long run. Demonstrating commitment to employee well-being and overall providing health insurance benefit educations to the town of Plymouth staff is an investment in our employees. It contributes to a healthier, more informed, and more satisfied workplace, ultimately benefiting the community through efficient and dedicated public service. Just a reminder, the summer parking in the Silver Hall lots across the street here on Court Street, lots 210 and 211. 2025 full statistical property reevaluation. We have Steve Whitney with us tonight, who will cover that as we move down through the agenda. The Loon Lake Road project. The Highway Department is preparing for the Loon Lake Road project, meeting with the town engineer and contractor, MC Build LLC, with regards to the temporary detour and timeline for the project. As of today, it looks like the project will kick off the first week of June. The Highway Department is currently working on the detour, so it will be ready when construction starts. Once the timeline is finalized, we will have signage in place and letters will be sent to the residents on Loon Lake Road and Chason Road areas. Eversource Trail Path, Fairgrounds Road. The town of Plymouth wishes to inform residents and trail users of upcoming maintenance and improvement work along the Eversource right-of-way trail path located off of Fairgrounds Road between Cooksville Road and Fairgrounds Road. This work is necessary to ensure the safety and long-term usability of the trail. The work will involve grading and resurfacing sections of the trail path, potential culvert and drainage improvements due to a sinkhole. The town of Plymouth will keep the public informed of any significant changes to the work schedule or trail closure as it becomes available. We appreciate your understanding and cooperation as we work with Eversource to maintain this improved and valuable recreational resource for our community.
Who owns that?
What's that?
Who owns that?
Eversource.
trail? They do. Okay.
Additional items that we've been working on, the personnel policy for the updates based on July 1st, 2025, to include all the collective bargaining agreement information as well as other sections that we had reviewed by town council to assure that we were still up to date on employment security information and wording. Renewed economic development efforts. You'll hear from Joseph tonight on some efforts that he and I have been working on. Plan New Hampshire Community Design Charrette Program. You'll hear from Joseph again tonight on that. And the June Town Manager's message. Employment opportunities. We have 2 openings. Those are police officers. Otherwise, all other positions have been filled. In closing, I encourage all residents to stay informed about town happenings by visiting the website, subscribing to the town newsletter, following our social media channels, Town of Plymouth Facebook page, and attending select board meetings in person, EBTV access, or through our Zoom link. Meetings are held on the second and fourth Monday evenings at 5 p.m. in Town Hall at 6 Post Office Square. Just 3 other quick things. Amy asked me to announce that the town clerk's office will be closed tomorrow, Wednesday, May 28th, as Amy and Melinda will both be in training for the day. Paving update with regards to Langdon Street, Winter Street, and Merrill Street. They'll be milling the edges on May 31st, and paving will take place on June 3rd, so those 3 roads will be completed. And again, as Zach mentioned, thank you to the Recreation Department, the Parks Department, and the Select Board for attending the ceremony yesterday. It was very well attended, very well organized, and I think very well received by many that I've heard from. So thank you to everybody involved. The efforts and dedication to the community are greatly appreciated. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Scott, comments? All right, that takes us to new purchase orders and grants. The first thing we have here is a request from Jesse Jennings for purchase of some streetlight poles from Hutchins Electric. Scott, do you want to?
Yeah, so a little bit about this. This was a grant that we wrote and received from Grafton County to pay for these 3 streetlight poles that we had submitted for. The problem with seeking out bids to have them replaced is that we have very limited electricians in the area that have a lift boom or truck that can accommodate putting up a pole, so they don't want to bid on it because they don't have the equipment to do that. One that we have used for many years now is Hutchins Electric. They've been very good to the town, and they were willing to put a bid together, even though the type of street light pole that we have out there now are very limited in resources. They're not in stock. They have to be made to order. And Hutchins does have a supplier that can do that. So Jesse put together this purchase order. There's $6,200 in change for each pole, for a total of $18,839. And I think our grant was for $20,000 for the replacement of these 3 poles.
So are these poles getting replaced so we don't have to special order parts anymore? Is that what's happening?
The poles are not usable any longer.
Okay.
Full replacement.
Full replacement. Okay.
Yeah. For those 3. And then hopefully Joseph and I will be working on a grant through Northern Borders for replacement of street lighting as well. But that's not coming due until August. Joseph?
Yeah, right about
I think so. We'll be working on
The
that.
application is due in August, or?
Applications,
There's 2 rounds of funding, and I think the second one opens months later. They have like a first part of the year round and a second part of the year round. They don't need to follow seasons. It's not quite like a spring and a fall, but roughly a spring and a fall round, as of our last conversation with them.
So we'll be applying for that when it becomes available.
So, according to the note on our sheet, it says this doesn't include installation of these lights?
It doesn't, and we have additional funds for the installation of them.
And is it Hutchins Electric that's going to do the installation
That
in
is
addition to this purchase order for the
Correct.
purchase? Okay.
Is this an opportunity for solar lights or energy efficient lights or,
The new heads are all energy efficient lights.
okay, so solar's,
And we've been replacing the heads periodically.
Okay.
Up and down the main street, like when we did the ones down by the Enterprise Center. Those were replaced with high energy efficiency heads on those.
and we just do it sort of as they need to be replaced?
Correct. That's what we have been doing.
Okay.
Just reading Jesse's note, it says, inform the board that it's been very difficult for electricians to quote me the cost of the light pole and head due to the low and non-availability. These light poles are no longer surplus stocked and are made to order. Is that true of just the specific design that we have?
It
or
is. It is.
Should we be looking at a different design to
I
find
think
something
we
that's a little
will
bit more
through the
reasonable to
grant
get a
that-
hold of?
I think we will through the grant, but in order to keep everything aesthetically correct with what the college has, because we were able to get all of the design materials from the university,
Yeah.
because we didn't have that. And, I mean, that's where we are now in order to get the lighting replaced that we need to get replaced.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about what the cost difference would be to
Yeah.
move to a different light design.
I was curious about that too. If there's a plan in the near future to redo all the lighting, would it be horrible to have a less costly interim fix for the lights that we have? I'd be curious to know.
I mean,
How long do the
Jesse
poles
can
typically?
definitely have Jesse look into that and see what else is available, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if it's similar price, like, yeah, who cares? But if it's
it's half the
significant,
price.
yeah, if it's significantly cheaper and easier to acquire, it feels like that would be interesting.
I would be curious to know as well, only because, I mean, it seems like I've heard a significant amount of concern that there's not enough light put out by the fixtures, and I'm glad that we're looking into other options, but knowing that it's an interim solution, I would be curious to know if there's a more cost-effective interim solution.
All right, let me take that back to him and let him research it and see what we can come up with, and I'll report back on the 9th.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, interim solution also, if we know what we're going to get for the
Yeah.
next grant, buy 3 that'll match the future ones, and various options for him to think about. But
Right. There's also that discount as well if we buy more than
yeah, if you get to 5,
Throw that out there.
yeah, right.
No,
It's not a lot of
we
savings.
will follow up on that.
Appreciate that. Thank
How
you.
long do they typically last? Is it just,
It's hard to say. These have been out here an awful long, I mean, it's not that we're replacing many at one time. It's either hit by a vehicle, or the head is destroyed by something, or it just burns out. And those are when we're replacing them now. I think, and Joseph and I talking, the 2 grants that are available is one for wood structures, which maybe we've got things at Fox Park that we can do, and the word we're hearing from Northern Borders is not a lot of community supply for the wood structures. And then there's this one here for infrastructure, which in Joseph and my discussions, the lighting, and just as you heard, the lighting on Main Street is horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And we need to do something about it, and we thought that took a priority.
I'm not sure I necessarily, I mean, there are merits of different lighting schemes, and what we have is fairly low light, so maybe from a safety standpoint,
From a
it's
safety
not the best
standpoint,
one,
we've
but
had
from aesthetically, it's not so bad either.
several people almost hit
Right.
because the lighting is not
There
appropriate.
are some spots that are particularly bad, like right out front here.
It's in down by the Enterprise Center, down by Peekaball, and even further down on South Main Street.
Where if it's raining, it's dark,
Yeah.
enough glare, it's very difficult to see people, especially if they're wearing dark clothing.
And my understanding is the co-op will put lights on existing utility poles, but it's our, if we want street lighting, that's town responsibility.
That is correct.
To own and maintain and power and all that stuff.
So I will take that back and we'll come back on June 9th.
Thank you.
All right, skateboard park project from Nor'easter Skate Parks. Assume that's why we have Mike here as well.
Do you need this, just to see what they have?
So just to kind of
Yeah, you wanna intro
lead
it?
off on this, Mike and a group met down at the skateboard park with Nor'easter Skateboard Parks and went through the full development of what's going to be added or what could be added, what was the most effective forms that could be put in to enhance the skateboard park here in Plymouth, which is part of the handout that you have tonight with the different areas that they want to work on. As we spoke about before, Mount Prospect Academy is building a pavilion that's adjacent to the skateboard park. And part of what Northeaster Skateboard Parks is recommending is actually connecting that gazebo to the skateboard park for younger users and for connection purpose. The gazebo is going to have an old train station look to it. And I think it's really going to look fabulous down there when all of this work is put together. But you can see we did receive a quote from them. Mike, I should say, as leading the project, a project manager, did go out to other companies and try to solicit bids. They did not respond back to us. This is a very specialized work that's done, and being here in the Northeast in Plymouth, we really have one available vendor, which is Northeast Skate Parks, which is located in Auburn, Maine, that's willing to come over and do the work. So the memo really talks about the challenges in soliciting the 3 bids and working outside of the procurement policy and working with Northeast Skateboard Parks, who in fact was the group that did the initial work at the skateboard park. Am I correct in saying that, Mike?
Mud Dogs,
Mud
they
Dogs,
did, yeah, on the second phase of it, yeah.
right.
And they highly recommend, we may actually get one of the Mud Dogs back to work for this group. It's a lot of fun. But, yeah, and Pat Moore, snowboarder, highly recommend them, your integrity and their work ethic. They've come up with some good ideas, you know, this transition from the pavilion into the skate park is gonna be incredible. So they're a good outfit, hard working.
And this again was a grant that was accepted a couple of meetings ago from the New Hampshire Charitable Trust. And the folks that provided the funding to the New Hampshire Charitable Trust really wanted it to go towards the skateboard park in recognition of Mike's efforts and of bringing that to Plymouth and trying to expand it and enhance it. So that's where we are tonight, looking for a signature on the purchase order so we can move forward the second week of June.
All right, I'll make a motion that we award the project of $155,000 to Nor'easter Skate Parks for the described arrangement to come from grant funding that we approved.
I'll second that.
Discussion, do we need to waive competitive bid on that?
We should.
And I'll amend that to waive competitive bid.
I will second that also.
Other discussion?
Just a couple questions, Mike. Just the usage, do you have any sort of incredible?
This weekend, I went by on Saturday, the weather wasn't great. I
Right.
went by on Sunday, and there was over 30 individuals using the skateboard park.
Wow.
And
That's just those 2 days,
Sure.
And it's a mixed bag too. We get, you know, in the earlier time of the day when the older kids aren't awake yet, families go down there with their kids, and
Right.
get little bicycles and things like that. So I mean, it's really, I think, done a great job to open it up to all
members of the community, little kids as well as.
Right,
And you know, I talked with Chief Hutchins, and there's been no issues down there.
right.
A lot of the skateboarding issues in town have gone away, place for them to go now.
Right.
But, no, it's just been, you know, it was funny, because the first time we did a skate jam, it was in the courtyard, at the courthouse. And I remember standing there and talking to Pat Moore, and I said, you know, look at this. We had all these people crammed in here, and we had all these little kids and teenagers and the older guys. And they were waiting quietly in line, calmly talking. Older kids talking to the younger kids about how to do this, how that. I said, look at this. This is what you want. You want people to integrate like this in a positive way. And it's just been, it's been great down there. It really has. I go down quite a bit, and I run into a lot of the kids.
Do you skate?
Uh,
Throwing that
yeah,
out there.
One time, somebody was going to donate bubble wrap. I haven't done it, but I don't
I
know.
would pay. Do we hold events?
Well, the university does they do a Halloween skate jam.
Oh.
And I expect, I'm hoping that there'll be a grand opening skate jam. I'd like to see one done more locally, and then when the university comes back, have them go ahead and do one as well. Just because I want to make sure our kids that live here don't get overwhelmed by the university kids.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's for everybody, but it would just cut
No,
it
that's
down.
awesome.
And I think once the pavilion's built, there'll be more usage down
Sure.
there for birthday parties or
Yeah.
other things that can take place. And, you know, one thing you'll hear from Joseph and Molly tonight is regards to charrettes and trying to connect that whole depot area back to the main street. So I think there's some positive imaging that will come out of the skateboard park, the pavilion, and how can we bring that all back up to the main street? And Joseph and Molly will talk about that a little bit tonight on a grant they've applied for. But I think it's an area that's going through revitalization, and also the building that Boomerang is in. Mount Prospect Academy has bought that. They're going to be renovating that entire building. So when you come into town from the south end, you will have, aesthetically, it will look very nice down there with the drainage pond, the skate park, the pavilion, and a brand new building that will be situated there to view as you enter town.
Jeff's been very, and his company, they've been very, very focused on doing it right by the town. Whether you're talking property taxes, which they technically don't have to pay. And then, you know, aesthetically what it's gonna look like down there. Jeff looks and he goes, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and, you know, drop it
Nice.
back. But he comes through, but he really has Plymouth, I think, in his best interest. He's been a good guy. I blinked and they put in the asphalt there and they poured a pad 40 by 40. It's like, wow, how'd this happen? So, it's kinda nice.
It's great. Any other discussion, questions for Mike?
No.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Good news.
Thank you.
Get it done.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the work you've
Yeah,
done on
thanks,
this.
Mike. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Trying to figure out what the next project is.
I'm sure we could find one for you.
Yep.
Just kidding.
Come see me, I have some things.
Well, they just tore down the old pizza place.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's,
Oh, did
they? I haven't been
I haven't been down there
Yeah.
either.
That went
Yeah.
down quick when they did that.
Let's drive
Yeah,
down there
when
on
they
my way out.
finally-
Little pizza place?
right next to the Flying Monkey.
Oh, okay.
Flying
The one that burned.
That burned.
Was it one or two?
The next building will go next week.
Right.
Both buildings will be removed by the end of next week.
They're putting in a parking garage.
That's Alex's thoughts.
There's your next project.
There you go. Exactly.
All right. Next up, the fire department
Grant.
grant and
Yes. They had applied for a Walmart Spark Good local government grant. And what that is specifically to fire departments to enhance their firefighting capabilities. So Plymouth Fire Department applied. They secured a $1,000 grant. And what their plan will be is to buy a new imaging camera for the attack engine. So out of their operating budget will cost $174. This purchase will be made after July 1st. So we're asking you to accept the funds, accept the $1,000 from Walmart.
I'll make a motion to accept the funds in the form of $1,000 from the Walmart grant.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Is that motion to accept and expend, or just to accept?
Just to accept, because we'll do the purchase order after for,
Okay, so we have the quote, but we don't have a purchase order for it yet. Note that import tariff.
Yep.
Okay. On to new business. Whitney Consultants is here to discuss the town's revaluation project to include the timeline and communication strategy for the 2025 full statistical property revaluation.
Good evening,
Thanks for joining us.
Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Steve Hamilton.
sorry.
Whitney
Yes.
Consulting is my company. And it's okay. Whitney is an old family name, and it was my dad's middle name. It's my middle name. It was his mother's maiden name. So I've carried on a bit of a family tradition with the name. And I already had a company with my dad that was Hamilton Appraisal, so I couldn't do that again. So we're in the process of updating the values for 2025 for two principal reasons. One, we have been converting the Patriot CAMA system, the old computer-assisted mass appraisal system, to Avatar CAMA, computer-assisted mass appraisal. And so when a conversion happens, there are different ways that each of these systems will calculate value. And so it's always prudent to conduct a valuation update at the same time that you change the system. These systems are very specialized. They have unique ways to calibrate and specify the way that the values are derived. And it's a little bit different than, say, going from Microsoft Excel to Google Sheets, or for those of us who are old school, going from Lotus 123.
Good old school.
I still miss 1, 2, 3.
It's much easier.
And it just is, each one is different, and the way that it calculates values are slightly different. The other reason is a practical reason. When the Department of Revenue Administration completed their ratio study to understand the relationship between the local assessed value and market value, they determined it last year in 2024 to be just under 82%. Now, there's nothing magical about that, but some of us remember the last time we did a valuation update when the ratio was in the 50s, and going from the 50s up to near 100% of market value is a shocking thing. Going from 82 to 100 is not nearly as surprising to taxpayers, although all property changes in value in different ways. And so even though the overall ratio was about 82%, there will be pockets that will change, increase a little bit more or less, depending on the characteristics in the market. Just quickly looking at the median selling price of single-family homes in 2022, in Plymouth it was $291,000. In 2023 it was $306,000. 2024 it's $370,000. So there's been a pretty significant uptick in value focused on the last few years. In order to carry out this revaluation, we examine all of the sale properties to make sure that we understand what it was that a person sold or bought, so that we understand that sale activity and can reflect it on the unsold properties. We've already inspected the sale properties. We've already begun the completion of a market analysis, so understanding what those sales tell us about the value overall in the community. That will go through the end of June. We'll have a set of draft values in the middle of July, about July 15th. We'll be ready to send notifications individually to every taxpayer of the result of the revaluation so that they can understand. Always, the biggest question will be, what will the tax rate be? We have no idea what the tax rate will be because the tax rate, it's set through the budgetary process. The total value of the community is used to divide the total appropriation. So we have some part in it, but only a part, and we don't know what the appropriation will be. And so we always ask taxpayers to be somewhat patient. The tax rate will get set in October by the Department of Revenue Administration. And so there'll be some forewarning of what the impact will be. We'll do our best to communicate to people what the overall change in value is as a result of the revaluation, because of course that will become the divisor in that equation of the tax rate. Once the letters go out, we're going to schedule informal hearings. It's an opportunity for people to come in, ask questions about their own assessment, talk about the assessing process, and it's really, most taxpayers look at it as the first opportunity to complain about their value. For us as mass appraisers, it's the last stop in the valuation process, because then we see what the consumers of our value are thinking about the results. And if there are any market differences between the market value of property and our assessed value, then we have the opportunity to correct those before a tax bill goes out. And it also reveals a lot of inconsistencies or errors that exist in the property record card for each property. So there's a good opportunity for corrections to be made. We'll be finished with our valuation work and submitting the summary report of value, that's the MS1 report, to the DRA so that they can use that in their tax setting process. We'll be submitting that at least by October 1st. It could be a few weeks before that if everything goes very smoothly in our valuation. That MS1 report technically has a due date in statute of September 1st, but it's a due date that has no general effect because the Department of Revenue can't set a tax rate until October 1st, for they rely on numbers regarding highway block grants and shared revenues from the state of New Hampshire that they won't have until October 1st. We'll be presenting them with a request for an extension, which is usually granted automatically up until that October 1st deadline. If there were anything to happen that would delay the entire process, I'd be communicating shortly with Scott, and we would bring any news to you as soon as we knew it. Wrapping up the revaluation is compiling all of the valuation information into a report, a mass appraisal report that complies with the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. Like any appraiser, mass appraisers have to explain how they did what they did. And then making sure that the field records get turned over to the town, and then answering any abatement requests that come in and making recommendations to you about whether it's prudent to grant them or to deny them. And those are the basic steps.
I think one thing that's important is we had our kickoff meeting for the reevaluation process with DRA. So representation of DRA comes here. They meet with Terry, myself, Emily, and we go through the process so that DRA has full oversight of the reevaluation process. And 2 years ago when we went through the process, I've got to say it worked very smoothly. I did attend some of the hearings, the informal hearings that Steve and Emily conducted, and they were very well done. I think the residents were very happy with the outcomes of their meetings, to the point where if someone felt there was a difference between what was recorded by the assessor and what they felt their home was worth, they had an assessor go out that day in some cases and do a reassessment of the property. So I think the most important pieces of this, and it went very smoothly last time we did it, is we will have a timeline in place on the website. We'll also communicate it through the newsletter. We'll also have a communication plan of the letters that will go out to the residents. We'll make sure, like I said, it's on the website, it's in the newsletter, and it specifically follows the New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration guidelines. And I feel it went very smooth last time. I think, Terry, you felt it went well, and it moved along very smoothly. So I think the plan that Steve has presented works well for the town of Plymouth. And, you know, there's benefits to 2 years, there's benefits to 5 years, but I think when you're looking at a 2-year is that it's a fair adjustment, as Steve said, the 82% getting up to the 100% of where we were before, I think at 52%, going up to the high 90s and 100%. So much more of a fair process to the taxpayers of the town.
You mentioned some figures on the median house increase. Are we seeing similar or less increases on commercial property?
So, commercial property values are unlike residential property values. If all I knew about real estate is what I learned from sitting on the couch next to Mrs. Hamilton and watching HGTV, I would know an awful lot about residential property buying decisions, because it's an emotional decision. People go and they fall in love with the house that they're going to buy. They look at a bunch of houses that they think they can afford, and they find the one that will fit best with their needs and their wants. That rarely happens in commercial property. Nobody walks into a strip mall and says, oh my God, I'm in love with this strip mall, I have to have it. It's all on paper. It's all about making sure that income is steady and sure, and that rates of return are reasonable, and that investors can make money on a purchase decision. Or oftentimes it's about an owner-occupant who may substitute buying a property for paying rent to another landlord. And so it's all about numbers. It's all about the dollars and cents and the calculations that have to be made. Things that impact commercial valuation are interest rates, because a lot of investors rely on borrowed money in order to facilitate the purchase of a property. Vacancy rates, rental income, those are the kinds of things that we watch the market indicators for those. But then we look at the results. We look at what are people paying for those properties. And while they have been increasing in value in the last 5 years, they haven't been increasing at the meteoric rates that residential properties have been.
So we're likely to see, again, out of this reappraisal, a shift in the tax burden towards residents and away from commercial.
So there's always a shift in revaluation towards value,
Right.
towards higher value. And if residential properties are more valuable, then certainly they're going to pick up more of their share of the tax burden relative to commercial properties. But here in New Hampshire, we have one rate of taxes that gets applied to every property type. And it's fair when it's based on the value of the property, the market value.
So that was a long way to say yes.
We don't like the word shift, but yes.
Yes.
Because
It is what it is.
it is what it is. That's the harsh reality of it.
Yeah.
And like we saw.
Just in turn, but for taxpayers who are listening and they get their new tax bill, right? Normally we say, well, the new revaluation shouldn't affect your tax bill because all it's doing is shifting everybody in town to be and on an individual basis. But generally, well, taxes didn't go up, right? We just did a revaluation, but because of this relationship between commercial and residential, the residential taxpayers will carry a larger burden of the cost. And so for residents in the town, this reevaluation will be an increase in their taxes, even if our appropriations remain flat.
All things being equal, it's about distribution of the tax burden by value. We call it a property tax, but it's a property value tax. And so when their residential property may go up, one of their neighbors may go up more than theirs or less than theirs, based on the market for particular types of property. There may be differences in condominiums, the way that condominium values are changing relative to residential properties or manufactured housing units. So there's a lot of shifting that goes on. It isn't just about residential and commercial. It's about every unique classification of property in the marketplace. Because, of course, we don't create value. We simply reflect the value that buyers and sellers are putting on property. So we do our best to build a mirror to reflect those market activities. It may not be a perfect mirror. There may be a few holes here and there. But overall, the mirror that we build, like last time around 2 years ago, was a pretty good mirror. Pretty good mirror of the actual value of the property at the time.
While it may have been a good mirror, the experience for the residential taxpayers in this town was extraordinarily painful after the last revaluation.
Because of where we were at 52%.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has to do with wasn't there like a 5-year time frame between evaluations?
Correct.
Exactly.
Yes.
But again, the primary reason, as I understand it, that the residents felt as big of an increase then was the shift from commercial to residential.
That was my understanding as well.
I mean, the one that took the biggest hit, the last reevaluation, was mobile homes.
Yes.
Took a higher hit than a single-family residential home.
Right, and manufactured mobile homes are also, stereotypically going to be, the most cash-strapped taxpayers in town. So that increase impacts them in a way that's disproportionate, maybe to.
And if you look at the sales, which we're getting from the Registry of Deeds in Grafton County, Plymouth is still 23 to 26% higher than the assessed value for the sale of the property in
Purchase
Plymouth.
prices.
Which, if you look at the 82%, I mean,
Alignment.
Yep.
And, it certainly last 2 years ago, going up from 52%, commercial property was increasing in value over that 5-year period. But residential property
It's increasing.
was increasing much more.
is way outpacing the commercial value change. And that's what, it's that waiting the 5 years in the presence of those kinds of changes in market value that makes it such a large incremental change. The wisdom of doing it every 2 years is that the increment is smaller, even on the same pace.
I gather that the service you provide is kind of relies on a proprietary algorithm to assess properties. I'm sure there are guidelines that the DRA establishes, but I'm sure there's some level of flexibility that you have as would any assessor, is that correct?
So there's no black box.
Right.
The value elements are extracted from the marketplace and applied to all of the properties in a uniform way. And that's what the completion of a mass appraisal is. It's categorizing property by type and then creating a database of the elements and then statistically testing the results against the sales of property.
That makes sense. My question is, in small communities in rural New Hampshire, there can be a lot of variability, especially when you get to unique commercial properties. Do you consider the number of commercial properties under construction as affecting the value of existing commercial properties, even if they're underutilized? Can you talk about that at all?
So, I mean, some of the indicators that we look for are vacancy rates, what is the opportunity for additional commercial development. And commercial development will occur when it's appropriate, and then that gets valued and added to the tax base in the year that it is constructed. And so when there is commercial development, and there's been quite a bit of commercial development in Plymouth over the last several years, and it continues. That part of the tax base will grow just in the number of properties and the value of those properties. Again, it being a value tax.
My question, though, is more about the value of existing properties. If you were to have two towns that were otherwise identical, one with development of additional commercial properties and one without development of those commercial properties, would you evaluate the value of that existing commercial real estate differently in those two situations?
The market would.
So
the market will express a higher demand, and that shows through land values. And so there'll be decidedly different value of land for commercial development in some place that's desirable for that effort versus some place that might be more remote and less desirable.
Thank you.
At the beginning, you talked about part of the reason for this change is switching from one software to another. Is there a reason why the switch is happening for the software? Or?
Well, so the system that is being replaced, Patriot Assess Pro CAMA system, I think has been unsupported now and for
Several years.
several years. And it became apparent to us that it needed to be replaced in order to provide a safe and sound CAMA system for the town to rely on. And we went through a process where we helped out the town to examine other software programs that might be available. And we helped them to find their way to Avatar Associates CAMA system, which is widely used in New Hampshire and pretty much tailor-made for New Hampshire.
We did go out to an RFP process with 3 or 4 different vendors that we looked at, and then we brought that information back to the board, and it was approved to go with Avatar based on its updating of the system and being able to handle everything that we need to do.
Great questions.
Any other questions for Steve?
Nope. People stole my questions, so.
And we will start updating the website and have the communications available for everyone and bring those to the board so you have copies of the communications that will be going out as well in case you get questions.
And I think importantly, and one thing I neglected to mention was that when we send out letters to individual taxpayers, we also post to the website a list of all of the values in the community. Because the first thing that Mrs. Hamilton wants to do when we get revalued in Salem is look up
Compare
what the
everybody.
neighbors are assessed at. And that's a very natural human.
But you also mentioned that you would provide the total value of assessed properties, which is the denominator, which is really the only metric you should be comparing your own assessment against if you want to understand the impact of your tax bill,
Of
right?
your tax bill, but that's
Not how it works.
Right, you tell Mrs. Hamilton
that's a very
that.
small
Right.
subset of humanity that is looking at it that way.
Right.
Most of,
If your assessment goes up relative to the denominator, your taxes will go up. If your assessment goes down relative to that denominator, your taxes will go down.
and some people,
As a portion of the
Exactly.
total payment, yes.
and some people's will. Some people's tax burdens will go down. Some will stay about the same, and
You
others will.
won't hear anything from those people.
They
Two of them.
rarely come into the process.
Right.
Quietly content.
And I did want to mention that, Scott used the word happiness or happy. We don't strive for happiness.
Yeah, you strive for.
We strive for the same level of unhappiness across the
high.
board. And that's, that's
People
really-
want to be heard. And I will say that the hearings I attended, the people are heard. And their thoughts, their process, their considerations are taken very seriously. And an assessor goes out and takes a look at the property. And like I said, in the fact of the meetings I was at, you were sending, your other daughter, Beth, out to do assessments that day. So I think people feel that they're being heard, their concerns are being addressed, and you're responding effectively to their concerns.
This might not be directed to you specifically, but can I ask a question? And how often does the town review things like conditions on individual tax cards? I know that, a building permit might trigger an update. Are there other conditions are there other situations where the condition of a property may be changed? A tax card might be,
Say good, and then
or it might be new construction. At some point, does it get downgraded if it's not maintained, or are homes that are more well-maintained, how does that get reflected in the tax card?
Through spot assessments, or take the fire down on South Main Street. When that happened, that gets re-looked at and gets adjusted. If there's construction and that's picked up through a building permit, that's adjusted. So there is a process. I can't say that every card is looked at, but
I think my question is more about just helping the public.
Yep.
If anybody's watching this, helping the public understand that, tax cards do get updated, and that, the physical attributes of your home, the square footage, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, garages, those things are all important, but condition affects that too, and that's a little bit more subjective. I'm sure there are objective standards, but interpretation can allow some variability there.
and the new software is going to help us out dramatically.
Right.
And being able to keep things updated in the cards.
Thank you.
So I know you said, website, all that will be updated.
Yep.
And I believe you also mentioned a letter going out to the community, just kind of a start. Do we know when that will first go out so we can protect ourselves?
What I was gonna do is work with Emily tomorrow to get that letter drafted, and then we'll have a better understanding. My guess would be in the first 2 weeks of June.
Okay, thank you.
How much HGTV do you watch on a weekly basis? Oh gosh, I saw that eye roll.
Scott more,
or do you walk out of the
but he
room?
doesn't.
The actual letters that are going out, though, you're indicating that won't go out until around July.
Correct.
There's only
That's
one letter
different.
that goes out to the taxpayers.
Well, no, we're
with their
gonna
new
do a
values.
letter announcing that this is coming.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we're gonna have a letter that announces this is coming. That will be posted on the website, go on the newsletter, go on our Facebook page, announcing that the reevaluation has started effective June 1st.
So
But that
tax-
will also be mailed to everybody.
I'm not sure it will be mailed, but we will make it available.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, there's just a huge
I mean,
percentage
there's
that
only
doesn't.
so much, the mailing cost is,
I
Pretty
get
good.
that, but
So it's
the
an
amount
amount.
of people that get hit on the website and the newsletter, I don't know, 400-500 people.
I'd say it's closer to 1,500 people.
Okay, so it's still I don't know.
And we'll outline what this is and how it affects them and why they need to pay attention.
It will.
Okay.
I think that's the fair and transparent way to do it, is to announce that it's coming.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve Hamilton,
Steve Whitney.
from Whitney
Hamilton.
Consultants.
Next up, we have an economic development update from Scott and Joseph.
Yes, so I'm going to ask Joseph and Molly to come forward. And there's a few things they're going to talk about tonight. And I think with Molly being here, we can start off with the New Hampshire housing. We can go through the charrette program and the grant that's being applied for. And then you can go through the housing champions. And then Joseph and I will tell you where we are on economic development and how a project plan is being put forward and together for board approval.
Okay.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, as Scott acknowledged, kind of a three-part agenda for this little update tonight. The first part is going to be with regards to an opportunity that's come up for the town under the Plan New Hampshire Community Design Charrette Program. So for those who may not be familiar, anyone in the public, anything like that, Plan New Hampshire is a nonprofit organization here in New Hampshire that's comprised of planners, architects, design professionals, and they have a history of assisting New Hampshire communities in basically vision-focused exercises. Their signature program is the Community Design Charrette Program. This is basically a opportunity for a municipality to ask Plan New Hampshire to come to your community. They bring a team of volunteers who are design professionals, part of their board, and they will spend a couple of days really deeply engaging with the community on a specific design-related challenge facing that community, and they will think about potentially based on those conversations that they have and other, professional knowledge that these people bring. They'll think about some potential recommendations, solutions, and where the real power of this is the visualizations that they can offer of potential scenarios for the future. If anybody had a chance to look at their website, the library of charrettes that they've done, some of them have some really, really exciting graphics, and it's a great way to help members of the public or even community leaders, boards, envision what different options for an area could look like. So there is really there's a lot of value to thinking about different recommended courses of action to solve some planning challenge. It's a whole different ballgame when you're talking about here's a visualization that we've had designed by a professional architect or landscape architect that shows here's what this area could look like. Here are a couple of opportunities, having engineers look at traffic patterns, people with a lot of diverse backgrounds, and these are volunteers, but there is a little bit of a cost to the program. So that's where kind of this presentation to everybody tonight comes in. There's a one-time opportunity being offered to communities that have received the HOP grant where they would have their $6,500 program fee waived. They do have to apply for this opportunity, and there are only 6 slots over the next 3 years for these charrettes to be done. So it's a little bit of a slow process. This is a nonprofit. They rely on volunteer professionals, so they cannot necessarily take on 5, 6, 7 projects in a year. They can only do a couple a year. But it's a really interesting opportunity for the community to think about some design challenges. And the planning board did talk about this, and of course Molly from the planning board is here, and the board and myself, we had some good discussion about that, and the planning board provided us some support for moving forward with this with regards to the Railroad Square, Depot Street area of the community. And I should mention that the one-time HOP opportunity It does require your proposed charrette to tie in some way to housing. It doesn't have to be only a new housing development, but there has to be some nexus between what you're asking Plan New Hampshire to come look at and housing in your community. And I think, we have a pretty strong connection there with that area of town. And then perhaps, I'll turn it over to Molly.
Sure. Did you say that because we had the HOP grant, we have the opportunity to have that fee waived?
Correct.
You
Yep,
did
the
say that.
$6,500 program fee, though there is, and thank you for pointing that out, it doesn't mean there's zero obligation on the part of the town, but that is our only direct cost. Indirect costs, they do ask towns to pick up the tab, so office supplies, potentially some accommodations for volunteers who are traveling from a far distance. But that $6,500 that the town pays to Plan New Hampshire for this program is waived if you're one of the successful HOP grantee communities. Thank you
And
for-
then there is additionally some scholarship money for those incidentals.
Absolutely, yep,
potentially,
that's another great point. The scholarship opportunities, which they have not really given us much guidance on how extensive that will be, but there's been an indication that they can provide some scholarship to communities to cover some of those costs. So accommodations for volunteers, office supplies, if we needed to reserve a space that had a fee associated with it. There is some scholarship that they're offering to these HOP grantee communities to really keep the cost burden on towns as low as possible. It may not be zero, but I think ideally it could be as low as zero.
Could be very, very low. So we on the planning board discussed what area we would like this charrette to cover. And it was pretty widely agreed that Railroad Square / Depot Street was the area that we would like to apply for. Phil brought up potentially Tenny Mountain Highway, and there was some further discussion of that, but the consensus came to Depot Street. So we feel that it really presents an interesting opportunity for reimagining it because it has so many kind of overlapping layers which include housing. It's some of the only new housing that we've seen in the downtown village area for a long time. How long?
Yeah, at least, that certainly in the last probably 10 plus
Sure.
years, probably longer.
Yeah, and it has not very much legibility, I would say, to the public. It's both like very close to a very public-facing part of town, but it feels kind of private, and yet the senior center's there, and it's this very valuable historical area, and the train comes through there, but there's parking, and it has all of these confusing uses that have a lot of potential in them for being both neighborhood and potential tourist reception area. We have a lot of potential ideas that we've been playing around with that we're using to sell this project to New Hampshire plans. And we also think that it could connect the town to the river more, etc. The charrette can really help us to visualize what, why, and how of getting there, and it's an interesting place because of its difficulties, I would say. So the benefits of a charrette would be the community engagement element. I think that we are very fortunate to have a town that does really, really care about the town. And I think as a planning board member, I'm always looking for more ways to get even more people involved in the process and having their voices heard. So with the HOP grant, with the master plan coming up, this is another kind of milestone or bullet point where people could have a say in what's going on. And I think it's also a very important educational opportunity. I'm not sure how many people have the opportunity to have their words be put into visualizations and drawings. And so those drawings are a really special part of this whole thing. And having them be really professional drawings is especially important. So in terms of kind of like the work phases, we had the discussion with the planning board, or in the planning board. Joseph and I have been working on the application, which is ongoing, but we are pretty confident that we're in a really good place with that. And we need the letter of support from the select board. We need to finalize the application. And then depending on acceptance, we would see a charrette in 1 to 3 years. Yep. Correct, okay.
And our timeline's pretty narrow on getting this approved by the board tonight, the letter of
Correct.
support. And the application has to be submitted by?
The 30th? Of May, yeah.
Oh, of May.
So,
it's
leaving it to right to the last
we
minute,
need
huh?
this very now.
Very now.
Was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, if I can just sort of echo what you just said about, so we do have if folks want to take a look at this, we have drafted a letter of support that is based on what the planning board has, planning board provided. Obviously, the select board will make their decision, but if the board wants to take a look at that, obviously we'd be
Molly.
happy to change it if the board would feel more comfortable with it in a different format, but just to give the board something to start with here. And then, I think what Molly said is really well encapsulates why Railroad Square is such an interesting place for this. Plan New Hampshire's reputation, they've been doing this since, I think it's 1996. Yep, they've done this 82 times since 1996. They've done it in communities of all shapes and sizes, but really their specialty is New England village centers. They really like working in these traditional small town downtowns. That's really where they thrive. So I think they would probably be pretty excited to work in Plymouth. And as we saw with the skate park, there's a lot of focus on this area of town lately. A lot of investment going into the skate park. The Alouette service of the Granite State Railway, perhaps folks have seen, will be running 4, I believe, tourist trains from Meredith to Plymouth over the course of this summer, which will be bringing people to the Senior Center Railroad Station. They'll be getting out sort of right in the heart of this area. It's a great opportunity for us to think about this side of Main Street, which has a lot of really great connections to the river, to the railroad, to the skate park, but in itself is a bit ill-defined.
And there's been a lot of work done in surrounding communities. They've done this in Ashland, they've done it in Campton, they've done it in Bristol, and really had great success in making some adjustments to those 3 communities, with them accepting the charrettes and moving forward with them. So, like Joseph and Molly both said, they've been working quite a few hours on putting the application together. And I think tonight we would ask for the select board's support so that the application can be submitted by May 30th.
All right, I'll make a motion that we support this initiative and sign off on the letter.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion about this?
Just curious, the application process, do we actually, when you folks are writing it up, you point right to Railroad Square and this is what we want to evaluate?
Questions or anything?
Actually, I don't think that made it into their packet. No, but
There's there are questions that are prompting a narrative.
Okay.
And so we've been writing a narrative. The first question is describe the project. I can't remember the second question off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But describe the background, any kind of issues we see. And yes, there's a map included in defining the area.
Okay. And we made that, obviously, I think it's a great place for that. But combination of, what the master plan and the community wanted, we sort of took that information as opposed to kind of this crazy open forum
I'm
of
really glad you said that.
everybody,
We went into the master plan and we very specifically pulled out bullet points from the master plan because
Okay.
one of the questions asked us to do that. So we pulled out bullet points from the master plan that we thought directly related to Railroad Square, having to do with economic development, having to do with land use, and of course housing, which has to be one of our points in the application in order to be what's the word I want? In order to be considered, thank you, for the waiving of the fee.
yeah, and we did, some of the questions are very place-based, so they ask about how does this part of the community interact with other parts of the community and other parts of the region. So they do kind of get at what is this particular area we're going to be working in. And yeah, as you said, that all we really did focus when thinking about and having this conversation with the planning board. We really did look at the master plan too, and the master plan calls for. The master plan has a lot in it, but it does, it includes, improving this area, creating, these neighborhoods near downtown, and there are a lot of possibilities that we may not even know about you know, that this area could serve and help make downtown, you know, even more vibrant, build on the success we have. But this area is also specifically called out for further evaluation in the
That's it.
master plan.
So do they get sort of a blank slate? We just say, here's our area, and we're open to, or, I know it's collaboration, just
Can you
various.
describe how the
approaches.
charrette actually works?
Yeah, so
They're
that's a great point. So the big picture of how the charrette is going to work, the Plan New Hampshire team will contact us. We'll set up a date with them. They'll be here for 2 days. The first day will be a series of both stakeholder meetings, so meeting with business owners, with property owners, other sort of people with a particular interest in the area. Then they hold 2 community meetings, and they also do a site walk with community leaders in the area. So it could be representatives from the select board, the planning board, you know, other interested parties, maybe the highway department. You know, it could be a broad group. Then they do a walkthrough, and they really look around. They take pictures, they analyze, and then they take that all back to their community engagement session. So I believe it's a total of 2 community meetings. And then the next day, their team stays in the community and really is a thinking day for their team. And their team digests what they heard from the community at those 2 community meetings and from the you know, community stakeholders that they interviewed at sort of their more focused discussion groups. And they try to boil that down into some high-level recommendations, and then they make a presentation to the community that second day of their initial findings, their initial thoughts, what they heard from the community. And then a few weeks later, they send the report where they have sort of fully baked their recommendations and taken all that feedback into account and taken their presentation and made it into really a visual, almost like a mini master plan in some ways, with a lot of graphics and visuals and sort of taking their bullet point recommendations and high-level thoughts and making it into, here's a great menu of what you can choose. You know, things you could consider, that many things, you know, that may be long existing ideas in the community that they heard a lot of support for, or perhaps things we haven't heard of.
Quite the commitment from these volunteers. It's an
Fast.
amazing amount of work.
A lot of work in a small amount of time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think it would be silly to not take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy.
Any other discussion?
Thank you for those questions.
Yeah,
That's very
sure.
helpful. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Joseph and Molly, thank you very
Sign
much.
that letter.
Thank you, Molly, for your
Really
time.
great, thank you.
Thank you both.
Awesome.
What? Yeah.
So the next piece is becoming a housing
doesn't matter.
champion.
Oh, I should say.
I was going to ask it.
And if you want to take the lead on that, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is another follow-up from a planning board discussion, which will be an action that would be on behalf of the town. So we certainly would like to discuss this with the select board and see that the select board also supports this before we move forward. The planning board did offer their support for this initiative, but step back, the Housing Champion program was created out of some of these Invest NH housing programs. It was part of a bigger package of projects, programs, and initiatives that the state was putting forward to try and put some resources into different ways to look at housing issues in the state. The Housing Champion designation is a program where communities who have certain attributes that are viewed as making them a place that is favorable to certain housing issues, they can be designated as a housing champion by the State Department of Business and Economic Affairs. Towns that are so designated as housing champions are designated on the basis of a matrix. There are a series of points that communities receive for different things. Receiving a HOP grant, having certain types of land use regulations in place, having certain types of infrastructure, a lot of different things that they view as being a part of a community that is open to, solving housing issues, working on housing issues. So this designation basically is not a commitment to anything on the part of the town, but is a reflection of the current conditions on the ground in the town, and makes the town eligible for certain grant funds that will become available in the future. So these are basically two pots of funding. One is funding that is a per unit grant, so with certain asterisks and caveats, certain types of housing being approved by the town would make the town that is a designated housing champion eligible for a per unit grant that is payable to the town. It's actually, as I understand it, relatively unrestricted per unit grants. And then the other pathway is it's a 80-20 matching infrastructure grant, so the town would be eligible to apply for this as well. The housing champion designation, which is what we're really discussing tonight, is just the signifier that the town would be eligible for these programs. Many housing champions may not choose to apply for any of these grants, but by being designated, we at least would have the opportunity to, if there was something that came up in the future that the town was looking for grant funding for, and we could find a way to fit it into one of these categories. And so that's kind of the high level, and kind of reflects a lot of what the planning board has worked on, particularly with the Housing Opportunities Planning Grant and the Housing Opportunities Planning Grant Phase 2, which has begun more recently. But yeah, I don't know if you had more additional thoughts on that.
I mean, an example of zoning that I think would qualify us is the, I'm not going to say it correctly because it's still new to me, but the variance where you can have multi-family, like on Texas Hill Road.
Oh, the residential co-location.
Co-location.
Yep.
Which has been taken advantage of twice now.
Yeah.
And we're having new housing being built as we speak. So that's all I could say.
No, I totally agree. I think that's a
Just ask him a quick question. Is this grant available to people who are looking to develop residential homes, or is it just to the town?
It would be to the town.
To the town?
Yep. So if the town chose to apply for one of the grants under this in the future, they would both be for the town.
Okay.
So if it was that per unit grant, again, the programs may be subject to change. So those are the current programs that they had launched the program with, but they left it open that, this is really the early stages of Housing Champions. We don't exactly know what is going to develop, but the first one, that per unit grant, if you approve a housing development, you municipality approve a housing development that meets certain criteria, this program, assuming there's funding in it, you apply to them, they could pay you the town a per unit allotment, basically, which theoretically the idea there is to help offset needs, costs that would be borne by the town if there are infrastructure needs, sidewalk needs that the town needs to take care of, or water and sewer upgrades, road repairs, to sort of offset some of that costs that may traditionally be borne by the development or may be responsibilities of the municipality. It kind of helps. The idea is it will help offset that. The other one is a application-based infrastructure grant, so pretty similar to other application-based infrastructure grants. I imagine they have some caveat that it should connect to housing in some way. If I'm thinking through the sort of way this program works, they would probably want to see something in your application that ties the grant application to housing. That probably, thinking about places that it could be used. I mean, the town has, many potential grants that could be applied for any given infrastructure project. It would basically be a tool in the toolbox. It may not be the best fit for every scenario, but for certain scenarios, it would be available.
And are you requesting a letter from the board to move forward with this, or just verbal support?
Yeah, so Plan New Hampshire actually does ask for a physical letter of support. The Housing Champions does not ask for a physical letter of support, but we would want to make sure that, it was something the select board was in support of before, moving forward to have the town designated as one of these housing champions.
Is there any downside?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to remember once we get the designation, assuming we do we have to renew it?
Yeah, 3 years. That's right.
One of the things that I remember is the way we can gain points is through board education. as well. So if your board members go to the conference or go to the webinars, those are ways in which you can earn points towards this designation. And so in some ways, it's also an incentive for further education of the board members.
And is that planning board and zoning board, Molly?
It is, okay.
And sort of to follow up on that too, I think, you know, since they are not actually asking us to do anything to get this, that's really meant to be a reflection of what the town has in place today, there's none that I can think of as far as downsides. You know, if they were asking us to do certain steps or take certain actions that the town may need to consider, but really they're saying, and they will score us. So they may say, you know, the town of Plymouth does not earn enough points.
We need to educate our board more.
Right, they may say, you know, you need more points on this, we'll come back to us next time. We don't exactly know. I mean, we can have a rough calculation, and my rough calculation says we're pretty close, and we probably meet we would probably get enough points, but ultimately BEA makes that call, and they are the ultimate interpreter of how those criteria, you know.
So there's no downsides.
No.
We just say we support it and we become eligible for, if we're accepted, a bunch of grant opportunities in the future.
Yes.
I'd say that's a win.
I would too.
Yes.
So
I
time
think-
requirements is really just the education piece, or, I don't mean to just say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, it's a you know, it's an application form that, you know, I can fill out, and would
Joseph's
fill
time.
out. So
Right.
it's
I guess I
pretty-
just meant, is there somebody that needs to be designated as that person to attend, or?
Mary Ann Barnes.
Well, I was gonna vote for not myself. I figured if I nominated somebody, then I'm up.
I have a feeling it's mostly on the planning board.
Okay. Okay, then.
I would think that somebody who might not want to see a lot of housing development in town might see this as a negative, but I
Yeah.
think that the consensus is that, like, the town could
And
use
even
housing.
then, they would only see it as a negative if we started applying for and getting those particular grants. The designation,
80-20 splits on infrastructure. I think we could benefit from that in a great way.
So I'll make a motion that we support this initiative.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?
I'd like to say thank you to Joseph and Molly.
Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming and
Exceptional
educating
amount
us.
of good work, yeah.
I'm a little heat exhausted right now too, so I'm glad I got through that and wasn't totally confusing to everybody. What's next? Do I need to stay for the next part
So
too?
the last piece,
I'm gonna stay for this too, yeah.
that Joseph and I have been working on is the economic development piece. And you recall we had Stuart Arnett in, we had Neil Cannon in, and after those meetings, Joseph and I got together because in July, Joseph will be promoted to our planner and director of economic development. And with that being said, Joseph has really jumped into this, and we've had 2 or 3 meetings now with regards to developing a work plan, developing a project plan to really renew our commitment to economic development in Plymouth. And with that, I'll let Joseph go through on who we've reached out to and who we're in hopes to have meetings with, and the ideas of bringing the committee back together in a very formulated manner to be progressive and move this project forward. So Joseph, please.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, you know, one of the key things, you know, the select board has had the opportunity to meet with 2 great, well-respected consultants, Neil Cannon and Stu Arnett, who, you know, I think had some interesting things to say. You know, and one thing that I think is you know, pretty important here, and one thing that I felt that, you know, those consultants also had stressed the need for was, you know, the board, the community seems to have an appetite. There are a lot of ideas, there's a lot of enthusiasm to create something sustainable that's going to be an ongoing effort, not just here's, you know, we have a group that sticks around long enough to implement one particular, say it's a tax incentive, or say it's a particular promotional agenda, or it's an infrastructure project, but really a sustained, coordinated effort that's integrated with other efforts that are thinking about the future of the town, the future development of the town. So really, Scott and I have met about this a couple of times, and we've had the opportunity to hopefully, to reach out to a couple of stakeholders. And I think, what's going to be key over the first steps of getting this project going is that, I think creating a committee that can be sort of the locus, pull all of these things together, is really probably going to be the key first step, to be sort of a visible center for all of these resources, a visible place in the community that is working on economic development initiatives, a project lead on implementation, and a coordinator of partners, stakeholders, consultants, and other folks. And then, of course, I think most importantly, helping to sort of chart a course and think about different ideas, help to process through many different ideas and harmonize them with other efforts in the town. Things like the master plan, the economic development chapter there, such that it is. And so to sort of think through that piece number 3, sort of the partners and consultants, we've had the opportunity to reach out to a couple of different people who I think will be pretty helpful in this first stages and perhaps ongoing beyond that. So we've reached out to Sue Cagle from the UNH Cooperative Extension, who does work with communities in Grafton County on economic development. She's a great resource, and she spends some time here at the Enterprise Center. Other people, Plymouth is in a unique place because we're located in the North Country Council's Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy region, the CEDS region. So for economic development purposes, say the Economic Development Administration funding that the town had to apply for this downtown project, we actually had to go through North Country Council to get that project on the regional economic development strategy. So there's another, we'll call it, somewhat overlapping entity, that's the CEDAR, the Economic Development Regions. And Scott and I have recently been in touch with I have his name here, Steve Fortier, the Administrator of Rural Economic Development for Business and Economic Affairs at the state of New Hampshire, who oversees the Comprehensive Economic Development Region program, which is the one that is not under North Country Council. So we plan to meet with him as soon as Friday to really help us think through bringing this committee forward, bringing some ideas together, partners together. But one thing that, I think is important is that, select board and in partnership, I would imagine with the planning board, having the select board and a committee led by the select board and the planning board perhaps as well, really sitting in the driver's seat. I think that the, one piece that I think Stu Arnett really emphasized that I think is important, when you're thinking about development, not just economic development, a particular tax incentive, but the overall development patterns that are going to shape a town, over the next 5, 10, 15 plus years, you're not going to get too far without, a pretty good consensus, building on some of these past efforts perhaps, and then also thinking about how it all ties together and bringing in, the public. So the planning board is working on a housing master plan chapter right now, and they do anticipate after that is kind of wrapping up, rolling it into the start of a new comprehensive master plan project. And I think a great opportunity for an economic development committee to help chart its course could be in partnership with that to help. We have economic development goals and economic development strategies in the master plan. One thing that the planning board has done recently is reflect on some of the goals and strategies that were outlined in the 2018 master plan. How do they hold up? How have we done on these? Have we made great progress? Are some of these, all this time later, no longer really what we envision? Are some of them something that, wait a second, we've kind of lost sight of that, but we really want to keep that in focus? So anyway, that's kind of maybe a step forward. I have, when we're talking about the committee, of course, really, it's in the select board's hands how to handle creating a committee, reforming a committee. I have, taken, and I'm not, I don't expect any action right now or anything like that, but just as sort of some food for thought, I have a draft resolution here, which is heavily based on those found in other communities, which is basically an outline of a resolution that could be used to formally recreate a committee. Of course, the town has had a committee at many points, and one thing that other towns have seemed to use, even when recreating a committee, is essentially chartering that committee with a specific resolution that can outline specific duties, terms, who's going to be involved. And if this is a very, very first brush, so again, I'm not asking the select board to approve this or anything at this point, but just to digest, think about how the select board wants to handle this, because I think this could be one possible scenario. It's certainly far from the only scenario. There are some things that are highlighted in there, things about how many committee members, where those committee members should come from. Planning board, select board, I think are the key ones, as well as community members at large. But are there other entities that the board would want to see represented on there? Some economic development committees have a permanent seat for a member from the Chamber of Commerce or the regional development agency in their area. So there are many ways to go about this. But the idea here is just to give some food for thought, something to digest and think about. If this is a direction that the board wants to go, and if there's some direction that the board wants to give to us about how we can best support this with some of our resources and administrative capacity here to help create something that we would hope would be able to be ongoing and serve as that coordinator, that visible resource center, the project lead on certain projects, and then kind of helping to harmonize different ideas, different visions, and really build that community consensus towards what economic development should look like for Plymouth.
Our hope is over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're able to meet with the contacts that we've reached out to, and then given time for the board to take a look at the resolution, give some thought to what Joseph has talked about tonight, and come back on the 23rd of June in hopes that we've met with these individuals and be able to provide a little bit of additional insight, and then have the board make some decisions and get this started sometime in July or August and moving forward.
And just, another quick, just if you wanted something else to go home with, I have some copies of the economic development and land use goals sections from the master plan. Many people may already have a whole master plan, but I think just pulling out these sections is pretty instructive. I mean, I spend a lot of time with the master plan, and even revisiting the economic development goals for me was an interesting experience. So I certainly, I think that's another one to just sort of think through and digest. I mean, we're nearing what we might consider the end of a typical master plan life cycle. I think it's a good time to be thinking about all of these things, and the planning board will be, and of course they'll be sort of spearheading a future master plan update. But I think having everybody sort of thinking about these things, and having specialists, economic development crew, the select board, and others kind of all kind of thinking through, where are we, all this time later. Things have changed, some things have stayed the same, and also, how do they reflect where we want to be? So that's the big picture. I don't want to just talk at you for too much longer here, but I'm happy to discuss or answer any questions or talk through anything.
Does the board feel that giving us a few more weeks and coming back the end of June to do a presentation
I like
with
that.
regards to additional information that we're able to bring forward? I really, and I'll take the fault that it didn't work last time with the cluster project from Plymouth State University, and I think we did try to do the best we could do, but it wasn't good enough. It failed, and we need to take a closer look, a harder look and really dive into this with a renewed commitment for economic development in Plymouth. And I think with Joseph leading this project, and I will be right by his side, working with him, but he has shown as a great resource in pulling information together. And I know that Molly will be willing to assist in any way that she possibly can. But these two right here are amazing in the work they've done so far with the 3 projects that we've talked about tonight. So I think we're moving in the right direction. If the board would just give us a little bit more time, and we'll come back in June 23rd.
Absolutely.
Support this.
I support.
Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
think it makes sense.
Molly, you've been voluntold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Awesome.
We appreciate you, Molly.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be appreciated, so can't complain.
And if
Thank you,
anybody
Joseph.
wants- Absolutely. If anybody wants further reading beyond the Hopkinton Economic Development Committee website happening in Hopkinton, just
Hopkinton, New Hampshire.
Hopkinton, New Hampshire. Yep, take a look at that. I've spent a lot of time with looking at different committees in the state. Their visual presence and the resource that just the website alone that the committee maintains is such a resource for that community. You know, someone looking at bringing a business or you know, being a part of that community, to find that landing page that centralizes their tax incentives, but also statewide incentives, statewide programming.
Small Business
zoning,
Administration.
Small Business Administration resources. And they do have some other local tax incentives that I know the board has thought about too, ERZs and 79E, and it all kind of centralizes it with this committee that, in my view, is a really a great model to look at.
Are they accomplishing their goals?
You know,
I have one anecdotal story of a business I love in Hopkinton that's been driven out of town by that
Interesting.
particular committee. So I have this,
really?
I have like this one idea in
Yeah.
my head of how that particular initiative is failing. But I also understand like one data point is not science, right? But
yeah. Well, and my data point is more their online presence. So again,
yeah, that's why have you
yeah.
engaged with them or
I haven't
yeah,
spoken to them at all. I've just looked at the resource, really as a resource hub.
There's a
But yeah, that's really
small
interesting.
business disc golf course that's in the town.
Oh, so it's a business that relies on cheap real estate?
You know, and
Maybe.
and so they were really not nice to them about their small business,
I
and
see that.
they have suddenly put their property for sale and are moving out of town and closing the thing down.
Wow.
Yeah,
What was the website again?
Hopkinton.
Happening in Hopkins.
Yeah.
We need to somehow.
I would say, it's funny, I mean, I spent a little bit of time in Hopkinton, and it's probably not that different than Plymouth, New Hampshire, Plymouth demographically. I mean, they don't have the hospital and the college that we have, but, you know, they have a lot of housing, and it's another one of those school districts with fairly high tax rates and a lot of support for education, and they keep, you know, so.
yeah, and it's generally an expensive community.
Yes.
More so than ours, but they don't have, you know, they don't have the lake, like, you know, they don't have waterfront
Similarly,
property
yeah,
like
they don't have any
like us,
water.
we don't.
Yeah,
So I know you've gotten an amazing promotion, because that's totally fair. Right, and all those things. Now, I know we all know how complicated this will be. In your research, are there any communities that actually have paid staff other than that will help, because there are so many pieces to it, kind of help keep that focus and that time commitment that will be required? Are there any towns that actually?
I can't say that we've looked into other towns, but Avery starts with us full-time on
Right.
July
Oh,
1st.
great.
So Joseph will have a planning assistant.
Great.
Working with him, that will be able to handle some of the workload as well.
Gotcha.
one of the consultants mentioned to us, encouraged us to look into a economic development corporation. Have you done any research or thinking around that?
Definitely, and you know that I think that there is value to those, absolutely. I think that my sense of where the EDC as a entity has been lately, you know, and I've looked at, you know, obviously some towns maintain their own, Franklin has their own. A lot of towns have folded their local EDCs up to the regional level, like Laconia,
Yeah.
great example, has folded up to Belknap County. And we are under Grafton County Regional Development Corporation, which really does a lot of the functions that a local EDC would do. So they do a lot of business financing, they do a lot of business counseling.
So it could be a situation of just getting a much better relationship with that
I think that,
existing entity.
yeah, I think
That's a
the
good point.
creating an overlapping layer, you know, you could, and I don't think that, I would say, don't think about it, but I would say, is there a way to leverage the resources that Grafton County Regional Development Corporation already is offering in Plymouth? And is there a way to make that work better for Plymouth and really leverage
Makes
those
sense.
resources
That's great.
without,
Yep.
you know, and there's no one right answer to these things, but I think they really have a great array of resources that, you know, if a business owner, if I were looking to start a business, I could go there and they could help connect me with funding. They could help connect me with mentoring and other types of business coaching, and also put me in contact with, you know, the Small Business Administration and bigger partners. So they do a lot of work. I don't know how active they are in Plymouth
They're-
directly.
they're
Yeah,
pretty
we've
active.
reached
I've-
out to them a couple times, and they've helped out in all kinds of ways, from not just M&M Scoots, but Explore Plymouth NH. They were, you know, all kinds of mentoring was huge.
I've been to a couple of their meetings, their quarterly meetings, and they have all of those partners right there at those meetings with them. And they are attended fairly well by, I remember when La Familia was coming into town, and they really didn't know where to go, what to do, and they attended the meeting I was at, and they connected them with the Small Business Administration, and all of a sudden, there they are.
Right.
So I think there is a very useful place for working with them and continuing our partnership in
That's
attending their meetings as well.
I think that's key. I think that's such an important partner, and they already have such a presence here in Plymouth with the Enterprise Center. You know, and part of it is helping people make the connection between, you know, I'm looking in the Plymouth area, I'm looking at, you know, bringing my business to Plymouth. How do we make that direct connection, give them a centralized place? And Grafton County, I think, should be one of the top things on the list that they find out about and that they are made aware of to help them on their journey of bringing a business to Plymouth. There are, you know, it's going to depend on the business, so it's not the right fit for every type of economic development, but I think it's a great one, and I think connecting it, you know, helping to make that connection is going to be a big part of it, and perhaps having a group that can kind of liaise between the two in some ways
Right.
would be a good way to help that.
Great.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next up, we have a review and acceptance of the ATC net meter refund from New Hampshire Electric Co-op.
So, this is, anytime that we receive funding, something to do with the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, we had advised the town that until the loan is paid off, we would actually pay any of this funding directly to CDFA, and the agreement was we would pay it within 30 days. So I'm asking the board to accept the $3,475.99 from New Hampshire Electric Co-op, which are funds that we receive directly from them from
The solar array.
December
Yep, December through March.
through March.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to authorize the payment of $3,475.99 directly to CDFA as a result of the net meter refund from NHAC.
I'm going to ask you to accept the funds, and then we can pay them out at the same time, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the funds in the amount of $34.75.99.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second.
It's there.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then I'll follow that with a motion to authorize the payment of $34,75.99 directly to CDFA.
Thank you.
Oh, no, you got it. I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Signature file. Look that thick. I'm happy about that.
Let's see, we have a elderly exemption requalification has gone through the assessors. I'm just looking for the board's approval on this, please. There's two places,
Thank you.
this other pen died, so we're both out of luck. Intent to cut timber, this is for property, let's see if I can, it's like Bartlett Road. It's a 228 acre lot, and about 50 acres of it is going to be cut. And the last one that I have here is a report of wood cut from prior year. $1,514.67 is the warrant. And two places, one at the top, one at the bottom.
And can I steal your other pen?
It's dead.
Died.
Oh, good,
Sorry.
sweet.
Nope. Don't be
Running
sorry.
out of pens, I gotta remember to bring some more up.
Bring some pens up.
I will not forget a pen again in the
that's
future.
I
okay.
will forget a pen in the future.
I was gonna say, I sometimes hide some back here, because I always forget.
Oh,
That's right, there's not too
Experienced
much
pro
more to
over here.
sign. Or maybe there, oh, look at that.
Oh, look at that.
oh, look at that. All right,
Ooh,
back to Ann.
all right. Thank you. And you're,
The experience of those who've come before me.
Exactly.
Zach, your visitor for non-public, I know is in the building, so I just didn't,
Oh, just
I just wanted to remind you of that.
Okay.
Okay.
Was there two on this one or just one? Just one. And if Jason's done signing, he can give us a village water sewer update.
Yeah. It was an interesting meeting.
Is that your first one?
No, it was not my first one. The biggest thing that happened was there was a catastrophic failure on pump station 4 at one point.
Is that the one that's on Tenny Mountain Highway by Burger King?
Yes.
Noticed all the equipment out there.
Right.
Some electronic components failed for that, but they didn't get a communication error from that. And so apparently the dry side of the well was full of water when it was not supposed to be full of water. So, and they run into problems with that because of the depth of that well, I believe, and they had to get equipment shipped from New Jersey in order to get it pumped out and fixed. So the cost so far was $51,000 for that rental. But they're looking to get a bypass flange so this special equipment won't be needed in the future. So, and they're, looking at what caused the, failure with that. So that was kind of the biggest thing.
What was the impact of that, the failure?
That was on the water side or the sewer side?
You're asking questions I do not know the answer to, unfortunately. So,
Okay. Just wondering how
Yeah.
did that affect people? If
It
it,
had no effect because they had backups.
gotcha. So Burger King was okay.
That's the key.
Right, yeah.
Keep those burgers flowing.
Right.
for the sewer force Main Street project up by the Baker River, they were working on that. They were running into issues with USDA because some of the staff got swept up in the Doge sweeping. So, but they did meet with the state director who promised no delays on that. The Highland Street Reservoir Emerson project has met 100% design and is out for bid. So they're working on that. The Holderness Well project is moving along, making slow, steady progress, and this will allow them well number 1 to go offline for repairs. So they're making progress on that. And then the Foster Street well replacement, they're going to be borrowing funds, $500,000 for that, but that's 100% loan forgiveness. So they're working on getting that fixed also. And those are the major things to report.
What was the date of that meeting?
That meeting was 5/13.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason? Phil, Planning Board.
So the planning board met last week, 2 weeks ago. It was the Thursday after our last meeting. We did have, so this was a public meeting, a public hearing. We addressed the social media policy. There was communication from Grace Garvey. We got a very nice letter from Marianne Barnsley addressing some discussion topics following our last meeting about parking. And there was a notification of a cell tower balloon float test in Sandborton that we received. That was the balloon test had happened before the meeting, so we didn't really get that out, and I had questions about that. But for those who aren't aware, a cell tower balloon test is publicly noticed. They float a balloon at the elevation of the cell tower so that people in the vicinity can see can get an idea of the visual impact before it's built. So we did not. This particular one was in Sandborton, so you actually get a notification for quite a large area when they do one of these. We had a continued compliance hearing for Mountain Village Charter School, which has had an approved site plan that was, conditionally approved site plan. We were waiting for a number of conditions of approval to be met, and we received a letter from the Mountain Village Charter School indicating that they have decided not to proceed at this time, and that if they were going to proceed, they would submit a new application in the future. So that's unfortunate. I think the planning board has been very flexible with the site plan requirements in hearing that, knowing that it's a volunteer-run organization and they're doing a lot to get up to speed. So we did have a site plan review for Walmart. They have proposed an expansion of their store on the, I have to think about, southeast corner, to accommodate increased kind of takeout, pre-buy, pickup and delivery service. I think it was about 20,000 square feet.
I thought it was 2,300 square feet.
2,300? Yes, that sounds better. Thank you.
23,000 would be a pretty
Yes.
big space.
Okay, yeah, I was, yeah.
That's big.
That's a zero between friends.
It's okay if you're writing me a check.
So it was about the same size of a house, which was in my brain. So 2,300 square feet and requires some additional signage. The planning board did agree to accept one of the pages of their site plan as a sign master plan, which they did not have on file since they were adding a bunch of signage. But that was approved, and there was a conceptual consultation for an expansion of a non-conforming use, but there was no representative present, and that did not go forward. So that is the long and the short of the last planning board meeting.
Any questions for Phil? All right, on to the school districts.
They've had no meetings since our last. The next ones are planned for the first week of June, if I recall correctly.
So next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
May's just
Next
flying.
week.
Conservation Commission?
Conservation Commission, there was some conversation about the NRI. They've sent out letters to 31 landowners, to try to get permission, to do like a walkthrough with the assessing company. They received 6 back. Of which 5 were open to access. They were looking for more properties along the Baker River to potentially get permissions from. So Joan's going to take care of some of those herself, that she knows some of the people. So she's gonna make some phone calls and make calls to those who haven't responded. So that's good. Trails Committee did a cleanup day on May 4th on the Texas Hill Trails, and I guess that went well. They did identify some trails that NEMBA did some cleanup at Fox Park. I guess there's some biking trails out there that I wasn't familiar with. Additionally, some trail, a bridge at Rainbow Falls that is in need of a repair. Since it is quite literally going over a trickle, they are thinking of just replacing that with some well-placed stones that will have a little bit longer life to them. They did talk a little bit about the Rotary Association doing some work potentially they've identified the area to go out that Langdon Park corridor as opposed to doing some extension to the sidewalk from the end of where Burger King is to the Rotary, not to the Rotary, the traffic crossing that we ultimately would love to have, and they would love to have too, but, well, that isn't something they're interested in doing, so.
It's a great thing to consider if we get infrastructure money from this housing opportunity grant.
We got a great update on the planning board. That's how I knew it was 2,300 square feet. They talked about a whole bunch of things there. I'm just trying to think of a conversation about conserving the field that hotel was going to go into near the Covered Bridge. This was, a desire to preserve that for farming type activities to keep it consistent with what has been previously used. Basically trying to prevent any large-scale development going out. And then a conversation about a letter sent to Frank McLean supporting the Habitat for Humanity initiative. Also, they have this nice postcard, and I'll hand a copy of these around, about some of the invasive species. So they created some of these things to hand out to people in appropriate places and times. So if you see some of these invasive species, they have a link on their website that covers it too. Their goal is ultimately to have basically a featured invasive and tell people how they can take action. And that concludes the meeting.
If I can go back and say one thing, the letter that we received from Grace Garvey on the planning board was related to looking for planning board help on interacting with land trusts. And I think that your question about that, conserving the field was, I think that was part of this. There was a discussion about land trusts around.
That was something specifically brought up by Gigi.
Oh, good. I think there have been multiple thoughts about the value of land trusts and the service they provide to the community.
All right. Any questions for Ted? Other questions for Ted?
Thanks, Ted.
Nothing on capital improvement, although I would think talking relatively soon.
Yeah, Sue is going to be pulling a meeting together in the month of July.
Okay, July. LRPC, I mentioned to Bill when I saw him on Monday that we needed to get him in here to give us an update on LRPC at some point. So we should do that at some point. Parks and Rec,
They don't meet again till August.
August. Energy Commission?
I do have a brief update. I think I mentioned that I attended the Clean Energy New Hampshire Pioneers of Progress discussion on the 9th at the last meeting. But one of the things that came up at that meeting, there was a presenter from Keene Keene State College has kind of a technology incubator and to help develop and get technology and get it to market. There was a presenter there that was talking about some technology that's appropriate for wastewater, harvesting energy from wastewater treatment facilities, and they were looking for communities. So I think I need to reach out to our water and sewer team to see if that's something that I can introduce this developer to them. But should I reach out to Chris, the board chair?
I would reach out to Jason Randall, the
To
superintendent.
Jason?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'll reach out to Jason.
Great. Anything else energy related?
But there was, all I wanted to say was there was great support by the three members of the Energy Commission who all
Right.
saw this and said, this is something Plymouth should look at.
Yeah. All right, advisory budget committee similarly won't do anything until July-ish, maybe later. PSU negotiations,
June 9th, we'll be
June, okay.
meeting with the president and Jess.
Right here.
That is correct.
okay. Perlac, that's also Bill at some point to give us an update. Any movement on the police and fire?
Yes, we have a meeting scheduled now. A notice just went out late this afternoon for June 11th.
Okay.
We have our final drawings back from the Turner Group, which Kevin got at the end of last week, and Mike McGinley will be coming in to speak with us at that meeting as well.
Nice, great.
I will still be out of town on the 11th. Are you available?
Yep.
Great.
Just kind of an update where we are and talk about the property.
Perfect. Union negotiations.
Not till July.
Yeah, July. Everything's about to start heating up. All right, public comments. I don't see anyone online. Participants too.
Scott, can you just update, in case you haven't yet, at the last meeting, Maggie Munford was indicating she hadn't heard anything. I just wanted to make sure that she had been contacted. In
Kevin
relief.
has been in contact with her. They've had a great conversation, and she will be at the meeting on June 11th.
Thank you.
Thank you for the follow-up.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
I'll make a motion to go into non-public according to RSA 91-A:3, number 2, C, reputation.
I was waiting for a second.
I'll second that.
Jason, your vote?
Okay, yes?
Bill?
Yes.
Zach, yes. Ted?
Yes.
Mary Ann?